no, I correct you. Mr. Stewart. Okay.
I feel like it was just here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. The first question I wanted to ask you about was the training of our soldiers that are going to theater in Latvia. And we understand that there's a decision made not to have the soldiers fully trained when they deploy. And just wondering about that decision and when that was made.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The earlier question alluded to General Leslie, a very deeply respected warrior leader that actually set up our Canadian Maneuver Training Center in Wainwright, a world-class facility, unquestionably for its immersion weapons effects simulation. That is the model we would ideally use. In this circumstance, the nature of the task force and the brigade is an integration of multiple nations. It was a deliberate choice to do the combat maneuver readiness training in Latvia with the allies to assure the integration.
Does that put our junior soldiers, for instance, that have less experience at any greater risk?
I think the same level of training is assured. In fact, the brigade was validated last weekend and got allotted from the Secretary General, from many CHODs, about the integration of Canada, the mindset and the complexity. And the added advantage is it was done in the face of Russia, so we gained the deterrence effect of doing it there.
How long would you estimate that training takes once soldiers arrive in Latvia?
I don't have a clean, you deserve a clear answer, Chair. I don't have.
I would imagine it's also ongoing every day. There's something additional and you're never done.
I see the question. Yeah, so there's individual training to prepare individuals, there's collective training by groups, and then there's continuation training. When we deploy people to places like Latvia or elsewhere, it's a continuous maintenance of a level of readiness.
Are there any other NATO nations that send their troops into theater in the same manner?
In fact, Italy and I think it's France do the same thing in Romania. But for their combat readiness evaluation, they do it by computer-assisted exercise. Canada's leading the way and was recognized last week for actually doing close combat maneuver under a division construct, showing other allies how it can be done. We have our folks permanently there. Other nations often rotate, or they return to their home nations on the weekend, as an example. So Canada is actually demonstrating our competitive advantage in our approach.
Okay, Deputy Minister and Lieutenant General, in the most recent directive on reconstitution, it included a risk assessment on achieving recruitment targets. And one of the risks highlighted was, and I quote here, widespread misinformation campaigns creating a lack of public confidence in national institutions could impede efforts to reconstitute. So I'm wondering, how could Russian disinformation regarding Ukraine and Canada's efforts and support for Ukraine through Up Unifier affect Canadians' trust and support in our institutions and military?
How about I'll start and then pass it on. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if our CSE colleagues also have views to share too. What we're worried about, as I think everybody is the trust in the institution. Is this an armed forces that you would want to work for, where you want to be recruited? And is it a mission that you believe in? Are we doing the right thing? So this would be our concern about incentivizing recruitment for those who we need in the armed forces.
What I would add is that is the point of mis and disinformation, is to create that distrust that my colleague spoke about. But what we have been doing as a CSE is combating and countering that mis and disinformation that comes from foreign actors in the form of the use of our foreign cyber operations. So we are able to use our tool sets to be able to help defend against those types of activities.
We are seeing then disinformation being populated in our social networks here in Canada. How do you defend against that once something's already been blasted out through a network and people believe it because they usually believe the first thing they see, not the second and third that defend it? How can you defend against that?
No, thank you very much for that question, because that is fundamentally one of the concerns that we collectively should have. And this is why the management of mis and disinformation has to be a whole society role. And one of the things that we have done on behalf of the Government of Canada is put in place a mis and information campaign over the last 2 fiscal years, where we have worked hard to educate Canadians to be more critical in their thinking and looking and questioning more the information that they're getting.
Maybe outside of your realm of expertise, but do you see that we're not teaching our children any longer to be critical thinkers? We have, we see this a lot in media, that there's an evaluation of our education systems, that we're now telling children how to think and not asking them to learn how to critically think.
That is beyond my capacities to talk about how our educational system works. However, what I would say, in the last month of October, where during Cybersecurity Month, we ran a campaign to really raise the awareness of the many generations of our community, including our young people, to really be those critical thinkers.
Okay, so of the 70,000 people who applied to join the military last year, 7,000 recruits were accepted. Of those 7,000, what number were rejected because they didn't meet the Prime Minister's woke agenda quotas?
Not the 7,000. How many of the 70,000?
The figures that I use.
Pardon me, 70,000. 70,000 were rejected.
Well, no.
Okay.
There's 7,000 accepted out of 70,000.
Right,
How
okay.
many?
So 7,000 accepted. Of those, what are rejected?
Perhaps I'll begin, Chair, with the distinction between those that demonstrate interest in joining and those that are actually enrolled. And in between, there's other categories of those that are given an offer. So maybe one of the things that we had offered was to come to defense as a committee, and we can walk through all the numbers. I'll answer the question directly.
What number of Canadians were rejected because of it?
So
The DEI. What number were rejected on that basis?
So it's not a question of. I'll try to answer directly, because you deserve that. It's we focus on who gets enrolled, and who, not necessarily who clicks and shows interest. The vast majority of people, so the number I'm tracking is 42,528 applicants. That's people that click and show interest. But in fact, the enrollment is something much smaller. And it's based on personal individual circumstance, based on our need. It could be health, although we're changing that. It could be.
What number are we still short for the forces to be at proper strength, full strength?
Regular force, reserve. I'll give you 3 numbers if that suits, Chair. We've previously said 71,500 is the authorized regular force strength. We are currently at 64,076. This includes people that are qualified and trained and people in the training system. We have 30,000 reserves, 23,008 reserves currently filling those seats.
So amid the $2.7 billion in cuts, how will the CSC Cyber Command be able to achieve the operational readiness to defend our country from cyber attacks?
So as a CSC, thank you for the question. We are definitely stand to the ready, and as we do every day, to defend Canada and Canadians' interests. And in terms of the foreign cyber operations and the cyber command that we have, that continues to do the role that it has on a daily basis. There are no direct cuts to those resources. On the contrary, the investments and that in which we hope we get out of Subs B includes the investment in the foreign cyber operations, which will allow us to continue to do the defense of the country via our active cyber operations and our defensive cyber operations.
Was our military impacted by Luminal Panda? The CrowdStrike group identified a recent hack. It affected the U.S. state telecoms.
So thank you for the question. I will not comment directly on cyber incidents, but what I can tell you is that we are aware of various incidences that occur, including that could potentially have impact to our defense and CAF colleagues, and we work very closely with them to ensure that we defend that. And because we have the ability to use our defense or cyber operations, we're actually often able to thwart the attack prior to it reaching Canadian shores and dealing with it in the cyberspace.
In the Baltic region, they have had fiber cables cut. They're alleging that it was the Chinese communists. Have any of those fiber optic cables cut been impacting Canada in any way?
Again, I won't get into the level of detail that you're seeking for reasons of national security. Having said that, what I can tell you is that because of the close partnerships that we have in the allies that we work with, we as a nation continue to be well protected and do not have any concerns with regards to our cyber protection.
Transfers out from defense spending to in the amount of $1.5 million to ACOA. I'm wondering how ACOA, these venture capital projects, are helping or assisting the military.
I'm happy to answer that, Mr. It's for a very specific initiative, actually based in Halifax, where we will be on the weekend. I think some of you are coming too. COVE is the name of an initiative, so it's a joint project for research and development in the Halifax area.
Ms. Gallant, just as a point of clarification, Ms. Gallant, you said $27 billion in cuts. You mean
2.7 billion.
Yes, I heard 27 billion.
Okay,
I'm glad we've clarified that point, because otherwise we'd all be having heart attacks. Okay.
Mr. Chair, always do. General Kelsey, so just taking your numbers, on authorized strength, reserve and regs combined is about 101,500. Current strength is sitting at just over 87,000 and change. So the total shortfall is 14,400 thereabouts, which is down from the 15,500 we were roughly a year ago. Is that correct?
Public math, Mr. Chair, is never my strength, but I'll agree, because those are the numbers that I used.
Now, in the past, when we've had General Eyre here, he did also mention that at one point we had 10,000 troops who were undertrained and undeployable. Do you know, out of the current strength of 87,000, how many would be undertrained and undeployable because they haven't been able to go through the proper schools for the trades that they've selected?
That's the difference between, Chair, the trained effective strength and the trained effective establishment. As of today, that number is 11,320. These are people in the training pipeline, people that could be on maternity or paternity leave, or have medical conditions that don't allow them to. That's regular force. Reserve, I didn't mention Rangers. Of course, there's 4,848 Canadian Rangers.
Rangers are almost at full strength, I would think.
Generally speaking, they different standards, yeah, full strength.
Okay, so out of that 11,320, those that are undertrained, not that are on leave because of various reasons, out of that 11,300, how are we going to get them trained faster so that we can get them in, increase our overall readiness?
That is the key question, Chair. General Carignan herself is chairing a new business transformation meeting to get to undertake understanding that. First, I'll address the recruiting, and then your specific question about the pipeline, because it affects all services. Recruiting transformation includes changing how we get people through the door. We're not lowering standards, we're lowering barriers. So we're redesigning security clearance processes, not the standard, but the processes, undertaking medical, which I know this committee had looked at before, we discussed before, to make it closer to Canadian standards, to make Canadians safe, but we get them in the door quicker, and the aptitude testing. We made changes in October. We're already seeing results related to that. As the question points out, it's not just about getting them in the door on the basic training. It's each of the services being able to adapt to this greater load. And because of the state of the gaps of people that we have to make a choice between pulling people from line units, readiness, into training institutions by Air Force, Navy, and Army. So it's a very complex system of systems, but it's the strategic discussion that General Carignan.
I do appreciate it. I got quite a few other questions. In these supplementary estimates, is there any restoration of funding to cadets that we know have been reduced from $240 million down to $200 million? Are we fixing that delta and increasing funding back to our cadet program?
Not in supplementary estimates B.
How about, I understand that talking to industry, that the Innovation Solutions Canada program has failed to follow up in confirming contracts with companies that are doing drone testing, doing targets, making pyrotechnics for training our troops, as well as our allies. Are those programs going to be, I'm awake. Are those going to be restored so that Canadian industry can have the confidence that they can follow through on development of new technology to help our training?
For the question, I'd need to know a bit more details about which companies exactly you're talking about. And as you may know, this is a shared program between multiple government departments, so it also might not be us. I will say we have not found it to be a very satisfactory program either. We share some of the concerns of businesses as well, and it is very much a developmental innovation kind of program, as opposed to, I think, what's really needed by industry, and we can address in the defense industrial strategy something more about how do you get this to market.
Okay, so next question is, in the supplementary estimates, are there dollars to start investing in upgrading our wings to deal with the security challenges around receiving F-35s and P-8s, which we will start getting in 2026?
In the supplementary estimate, there is $561 million for the P-8.
Does that fix the infrastructure, the cybersecurity, the physical security that we need our wings to receive the P-8s?
So
that's just going into the airframe. That doesn't help us with the security challenges that we have on the ground to receive the aircraft.
So bringing the P-8 within the Canadian Armed Forces there is a requirement to address the whole capability, which includes infrastructure, training. So it goes against equipment, infrastructure, training.
I'll just ask a couple of questions myself, and I'll address this to Deputy Minister Beck. I guess I better start. $3.3 billion is a lot of dough. It's a particularly a lot of money for supplementary estimates. So my question is, does this move the 2% needle at all?
Yes. Yes, it will. This will get us up from about $30 billion of annual spending to just over $34 billion. So yes, it is part of the path to get us to the full 2% by 2032.
And if the supplementary estimates you weren't presenting, presumably you wouldn't be moving the needle. I'd be interested in knowing, in terms of percentage terms, how much the needle gets moved by the passing of these supplemental estimates.
Yep, Jonathan.
So we are on a pathway to 1.74%. So this will move the needle, as the Deputy Minister said. But also there's a large number of funding sources through ONSAF which have not yet been brought forward in supplementary estimates. So we are proposing to bring forward a supplementary estimate C, which will bring forward some of those items, in particular ammunition.
So does this constitute an accelerated path from what is either in the DPU or was currently in the public domain?
Well, 3.3 billion is basically a 10.5% increase into our overall budget. So it is definitely heading in the direction of a path towards 2%.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
May I add, just because worth noting that any budget that's invested in CSC goes fully towards the 2%. And so the supplementary estimate money that is with CSC will be part of that 2%.
Because you have a kind of a weird funding source because you're also associated with public safety and no? Okay.
Totally under the defense
Okay.
portfolio.
Well, financing wise, yes.
No.
Reporting
No.
line does.
No.
Okay.
Totally report to the Minister of Defense,
right.
Mr. Chair.
I will stand corrected for the time being. You have indicated that you are moving personnel into Taiwan. I think that is correct. Taiwan is clearly a world leader in misinformation and disinformation and dealing with it. What, if anything, can you say about, in the context of the Indo-Pacific strategy, your potentially increased presence in Taiwan?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if that question was directed at me. But what I can say is I do not have any personnel that will be moving into Taiwan. What I would say is that we are definitely working towards implementing the Indo-Pacific strategy, and with that we received some funding of which is part of our base now, and we will be placing people in the region to be able to support the implementation of the strategy, and we work with partners and multilateral partners as well from the region in addition to our Five Eyes to continue to ensure that we defend Canadian interests as well as priorities of the government when it comes to the Indo-Pacific strategy.
Mr. Bazan and I traveled to Taiwan, what, a year and a half? And Cheryl.
And Lindsay.
Yeah, that's right.
And Christine.
Okay, everybody.
Half of us were there.
Yeah, and I think it's, I think that all of us were really impressed by the way the Taiwanese handled this constant barrage of misinformation, disinformation, primarily emanating from Beijing. So I would be encouraged if CSE and our other cyber folks had some close working relationship with the way Taiwan does things.